TK here, TK and Drinks, and welcome to the BJCP Style Guidelines Advice Series. We're doing M1C Sweet Traditionals today. Appreciate everybody who is able to join us, whether you're in the live stream or in the replay. Today, again, M1C Sweet Traditionals. You can be joined by Joe from Zymarium Meadery. Oh, looks like he's already popped in there. Let's see if we can get him on. And it falls together like this. Everything is lining up. Well, hopefully the video lines up too. People haven't been able to see me the last couple of times. What's going on, Joe? How are you doing today?
Hey, good. How are you?
Can you see me?
I cannot. It's just got a blank spot where you are. That's so weird because I could see you before I joined.
But yeah, now you can't. See, and I was doing it to Alan last week. So I apologize for that. We could try to reconnect, but I can't guarantee it'll change the situation.
No, it's no problem. I pulled you up on my laptop next to me.
Oh, hey, Aaron. Appreciate that. So thank you for joining me today. Appreciate that. We've never really gotten to speak in person, everything just a bit over email. So I'm super excited to get to try some of your meats and super excited to imbibe in some of your knowledge.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So go ahead and give yourself a quick little introduction. And while you're doing that, I'm going to crack into this bottle of Soliloquy of Nectar.
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Joe Lee. I am the co-owner and head meat maker at Zymarium Meadery. My wife and I opened almost 2 years ago. So our 2-year anniversary is actually next month on the 16th. So we're gearing up for all that. Gonna have like 10 new meats and stuff.
Hell yeah. And anniversary parties are always a hell of a shindig, or they should be anyway.
Absolutely. Last year we had a local tattoo studio do a pop-up, and they did like 22 tattoos back here, and a few people even got our logo.
Hell yeah. That's
Yeah,
pretty
that
damn
was surreal.
impressive. Love the corks. Always love the personalized corks. Those are always legit.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get the best parts we can from Scott Labs. We build all our meads and bottles to age and improve for the next 10 years because we bottle the sweet stuff, and our meads have the same chemistry as Sauternes. And we use vacuum bottling, vacuum corking. So yeah, they definitely just keep getting better over the years.
Damn, that's impressive. I'm here for all that. And it smells amazing right off the nose, too. So I guess let's just get straight away into it. So tonight we're here for doing M1C Sweet Traditionals, the BJCP Style Guidelines Advice Series. Joe is gracious enough to share some of his sweet traditional mead knowledge. He's had an award or two for a sweet mead in his life. And this is the Soliloquy of Nectar series, which I believe is the single varietal traditional series.
Exactly. So yeah, the soliloquy kind of comes from the idea of letting the honey speak for itself like a monologue.
Excellent. Ooh, we got all sorts of feedback or something.
Oh, got a call. There we go. Turn that
Oh,
off.
oh. Excellent. All right, so yeah, I love the idea of just letting, make a single varietal of just letting the honey shine through and become the showcase for it. And the lahua is the probably one of the staples, I'd say, of a Hawaiian of the Hawaiian honeys. You get a lot of macadamia blossom, lahua blossom, pretty solid goes there. So I guess let's start off with the question of what makes a great sweet traditional meat in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, it really needs to showcase the honey. Uh, if it doesn't taste like the honey, then you know, I don't think it's done its job.
Right.
And it needs to be sweet, of course, but it can't be cloying. That's a big difference. So with big sweetness comes big acid. Big alcohol is also can help balance it. Oak, I think, is very important. I don't think oak should. You don't need to barrel age it. Oak doesn't need to be present in the flavor profile, but
Mm.
oak should be in the mead. I think oak should be in every mead, but we can get into that later.
I'm in that same category myself. So, but yeah, no, I agree. If the honey, so the honey should definitely shine through the most, and especially in the sweet traditional, all those things you said, sweet but not cloying, um, you know, a well and accurate representation of the varietal and all of its characteristics. So when you're making a sweet meat, it's always the silliest question for this category of traditionals, but when do you choose the honey in the process? It kind of, I'm assuming like straight out the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite thing to do with soliloquies is when we get a really good example of a varietal honey is to, of course, make it into a soliloquy to showcase it. Um, I'm sure
Yeah.
there's honeys that wouldn't make a good single varietal, like buckwheat, which is kind of infamous and better with things like cherries or um,
Yeah.
but Florida has a ton of incredible honeys, and since opening, we've noticed. Well, it's just in general, people don't know honeys taste different. Obviously, us mead makers, we get really excited about that fact, but a lot of people don't know that's a thing.
I know.
So even our local customers think Florida is, we have orange blossom and wildflower. That's it. Um, but we have worked with a lot of apiaries around the state, almost all within 2 hours of Orlando, because we're central Florida, so we get both coasts and north and
Nice.
south. Turns into like, I don't want to say farmland, but it gets a lot more rural, a couple hours north and south. Uh,
Okay.
so we get incredible black mangrove honey over on the
Ooh.
coast near NASA and SpaceX. That's all government land. And black
Oh,
mangroves grow on the coast because they're like a barrier plant. And since it's all government land, it's very pure black mangroves. So we can get really good black mangrove honey. And that
oh,
was one of the
nice.
first soliloquies we opened with to really showcase that caramel, almost sea salt butterscotch honey. It's one of my favorite Florida honeys, and a lot of people don't know it exists.
I have not had I have not had a mangrove honey. I've had palmetto honey. I'm a huge fan of palmetto honey, but I have not had mangrove,
Yeah,
specifically black mangroves.
Palmetto's excellent. A lot of gallberry, a lot of holly, and in all the swamp areas are wild swamp blackberries. So we got blackberry honey too in Florida. I'm sure some people have come across Tupelo blackberry, and it's actually
Oh,
black gum Tupelo. When you do find that, it's not white Tupelo, it's black Tupelo, because they grow in the same swampy areas.
holy cow! I, see, that's my favorite part about talking to people from different regions is learning about all the different regional honeys. So if I talked to a guy from Australia, was talking to me about all these crazy um, outback honeys and bush honeys, he was calling them that they could get. And he said, I've seen, 20 varietals I've never seen anywhere else just out in the bush, and I'm just sitting here salivating. It's like, oh, that's so tempting.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite Australian honey stories is someone was real adamant about hating eucalyptus honey. And the guy in Australia is like, we have 300 varietals of eucalyptus, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Well, that shut me down really quick there. Holy cow. Never even would have thought 300 varieties of eucalyptus. That's insane. But I mean,
Yeah,
it makes sense though, especially when you're in an area where it's native too. So the the variants, the varietals would make sense that you'd be aware of that. Um, so
absolutely.
playing up to those natural honey characteristic flavors and uh, characteristics in the honey. How big of a selection? How big of a role does yeast selection play when you're making your meats?
It's huge. Um, so there are plenty of yeasts that respect the honey in the sense of they don't add esters, they don't add acid or eat acid, and you really get in what you put out, or you get out what you put in.
There you
Um,
go.
and those are some of the really clean yeasts, like DB10 is really awesome, especially cold. The colder, the better.
Ooh,
You can really go low and slow. It's kind of like in beer when you're lagering, you're fermenting cold, and the colder you ferment, the more you're preserving those aromatics. It really prevents an aggressive fermentation. But with honeys like this, like Lahua, this honey is, it is fermented. So the honey straight is kind of like a funky, overripe pineapple, tropical fruits with like a butterscotch finish.
yes.
It's one of my absolute favorite honeys. and QA23, really excels at tropical esters. So it
Very
really
much so.
amplifies all those flavors, the pineapple, the fermented tropical fruit. So pairing a yeast with a honey varietal can also be really powerful, and this is one of the best examples, in my opinion. This honey and yeast were made for each other, and this one I recommend fermenting hot, or ambient, warm,
Yeah,
because
sure.
the warmer it is, the more esters you're going to get, and it really helps this honey and this yeast.
Yeah, QA
But
23 is definitely one that I've played with a few different times, and yeah, the pineapple effect is real.
Yeah. I don't think it's as strong when you ferment this one cold, but I've never
Mm,
bothered fermenting QA23 cold because I think yeasts specialize in different functions and different temperatures.
hmm
So I'm sure you could make QA23 your house yeast and ferment 50 degrees or 90 degrees, depending on the results you want. But I
Yeah,
think yeast are like pools, so you know, different problems require different solutions.
absolutely. Um, and is a feeding schedule alteration something that you would do based on different yeast selections for sweet traditionals, or you pretty much everything you make is the same feeding schedule?
So let's see, I've been making mead for almost 10 years now, or over 10 years, and entering competitions for over seven. And I guess four, five of those seven were home brews. So all those years, Tasna will get you. Tasna is all you need. Um, I'm not using
Right.
Tasna professionally because it's an insane amount of ferment O. And when you're working with ferment O, it has a distinct smell.
Oh,
Um,
very much so.
yeah, so when you're using large quantities, I haven't had time to do enough side by sides, but I feel like you can get a better result not using that much ferment O and splitting up the feedings between O, K, and DAP to the goal is to use uh, the same amount of yan, but the least amount of yeast or least amount of dead yeast nutrients as possible, um, to get the cleanest fermentation possible. But as long as you're feeding your yeast and your yeast is
Yeah.
happy, you're going to have a good final product.
Yeah, I have not worked with DAP or anything like that, K and DAP and whatnot. Just because when I was first started getting into it, it was this kind of seemingly big uprise for Fermado and all organic and all this stuff, and now I'm basically kind of finding out it's like no, it's all just got a purpose and it's all serves its own. There's a time and a place for everything, so to
Absolutely.
speak.
Yeah, Tosna will. You don't ever need to use anything other than Tosna. Tosna will do
Yeah.
everything you need. It's just kind of micro gains, and when it comes down, since we have to sell mead to stay open, so uh, if using some K and DAP is a little bit cheaper than O, that also helps. So every inch helps, and I feel like the product's better as well. And
Mhm.
it's more effort. Fermento's easy mode because you're just using one thing, and at home that's great. You don't need three different containers of different nutrients, and um,
Right.
so it's much easier. And I highly recommend it for home brewers. Just Tosna.
Absolutely. That's what I've always used, but I'm always curious if somebody's got tried to figure out something better. Um, so do you use, you mentioned oak earlier and acid balance and adjustments. So do you recommend using products like FT Blanc or Opti White or specifically those ones or any sort of those like tannic additives, or do you try to go with like either just straight tea or like oak cube spirals or the sort?
Um, all of the above minus the tea. Um, I don't. I feel honey is so expensive, and you can make something that will improve for decades, at least a decade. So it's worth putting in as much effort and sparing no expense up front. So
Yeah.
all of those additives are, I feel, crucial to making the best mead possible. Grapes. So we're coming from the wine world more or less with Scott Labs and the handbook and everything. So
Right.
grapes have a ton of things they're bringing to the party. They're bringing skins, they're bringing plant matter, uh, different organic acids. So what's going into the fermentation is a lot different than honey. Honey is incredibly complex. It has a lot of different acids and a lot of different sugars, but it does not have tannins. It does not have fruit uh, physical matter. Um,
Right.
so I feel we need to make up for that fact with things like the Opti White and FT Blanc and all of that. And that's one big reason why big melomels work so well is because all that fruit, all those skins are really, working overtime to make the meat excellent in the best way
Absolutely.
possible. So when you're doing traditional, you need to make up for that fact, and it just makes the meat better. So yeah, in addition to using the additives, is using chips, staves, uh, cubes,
Yeah.
powders, all different forms of oak. They all have different forms and functions. Some are better fermentation aids, some are better for aging, some are
Yep.
better mid fermentation. You can really dive down the rabbit hole. But I feel like just like every beer, minus some weird styles, every beer has hops. Whether it's a Pilsner or a triple IPA, hops are a part of beer. And I feel like oak needs to be part of mead. Uh, Whether it's a dry traditional or a big sweet traditional or anything, it doesn't matter. I think oak should be in every single mead.
I personally agree with you 100%. Is one of the things I was talking with my buddy Alan last week for the semi sweets, and that's a trick that I learned from him is like introduce oak as soon as possible to your mead. Like he taught me that straight out the gate. So I put in cubes or spirals or whatever whatever I've got. This is the first I'm hearing about different cuts being better for different stages of fermentation. But it doesn't really surprise me when I think about it. It's different surface areas, different amounts of oxidization are going to be able to occur, or whatever fermentation science happens in there. That's one of my definitely weaker spots. But I totally understand that it would make sense that these things would affect the the way that the oak is infused into the meat at that stage.
Yeah,
But again, I agree 100%. It adds a nuanced character at least, and at best, it's adding all sorts of body and all sorts of complexity that's only going to benefit almost every single mead that it comes across.
exactly. And like I was saying earlier, it never needs to be part of the flavor profile. It's yeah, like you said, increasing the
Right.
body. It's cleaning up the finish. It helps to prevent from being cloying. It also helps to prevent from being watery. That's a big problem with dry traditionals is they can taste like a real watery white wine. Um,
Absolutely.
and there's no reason for that. It can definitely be remedied. I feel like it's a flaw if it's watery. It doesn't need to be thick or oaky or chewy, but it
Yeah.
can be, you know, have more body than water.
Yes. Absolutely. Speaking of that, I really enjoy the body and the character on this. Everything about this is really just finely tuned. The Hua honey character is very true to the actual raw honey type of characteristic. There's no fusel alcohols or anything like that. The body on it is amazing. It's got wonderful legs. Everything. It's right at that sweet precipice without borderline cloying. Not even going to borderline cloying. It's like right where you'd want it to be. And then just this
Right.
is I don't know. I've got this much down there, not too much, and I'd say there's a hint of oak at the back of it. I mean, I know it's there, it's present, but like you said, it's not part of the flavor profile. It's not something that uh, I feel like I'm sucking on an oak stave that's I just pulled out. All the well-rounded character to it. This is
Yeah,
well done from us.
thank you. So this one, this one's the perfect example for us to talk about for this because this one, this won silver at the Mazer Cup last year for Sweet Traditional, and it also at the Mead Institute Mead Open. This is one of our 90-point plus meads.
Nice.
Um, yeah, so
So yeah,
it
that's
yeah, it
Yeah,
got
that's a
the,
double winner.
exactly, and two different worlds. The Mead
Very much
Institute
so.
hired a dozen Psalms to do the reviews and judging, so they're
Yeah,
coming at it with a much different training of palates, and getting that feedback's been really, really cool to see. And
yeah,
because a lot of mead, there's mead judges, and then there's a lot of mead judges that are more beer judges than mead judges, and then getting wine
right.
judges just gives you a real complete picture of what people think about it outside of the general public.
Yeah, I love the beer judges. I'm super grateful that they jump in and judge meads, when necessary and when able and everything. But we really do need a lot more um, wine knowledgeable, mead knowledgeable people dedicated to the craft of judging because it would only benefit the whole competition process in general.
Absolutely. So what do you think the final gravity is on this?
Ooh, finished gravity or like I don't know if you back sweeten it, but like the gravity it's sitting at right now, um,
Yeah.
1065, 1070.
So this is actually 1085.
So a little sweeter than that, but yeah, no, it drinks really well.
Thank you.
I'm
And yeah,
not
no,
a sucker for
I
a
love
sweet
that you
meat though,
guessed.
personally.
Yeah, I love that you guessed lower. So I was looking back through the Psalm judge sheets just before the call, and
Hmm.
five different Psalms judged it, and they're the Mead Institute uses really good mead judging sheets. I hope they all the mead competitions start to use them because they're a lot. There's a lot more thought put into them. The BJCP one, it's been around forever, but uh, it forces you to write a lot.
Hmm.
Whereas if there's rubrics and you can kind of check boxes on different categories, it helps narrow
Yes,
your thoughts,
it's
and it
more
also
objective
helps
and less
you.
subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. But it also lets you hit. It forces you to think about 20 different aspects and grade it on all of those rather than just what it smells like, looks like, tastes like, feels like overall.
Right.
So one of the things on the Psalm sheet was sweetness level, and three of the five judges put sweet,
Hmm.
one put lusciously sweet, and
Lusciously.
one put semi-sweet. So um, uh,
I'll go with
tasting
that.
is always going to be incredibly subjective, no matter how objective we want it to be. And I know with the BJCP guidelines, something like a
Yeah.
1083, 1084 mead seems astronomically way too sweet, going to be cloying. If they used
Right.
hydrometer to judging, it would be disqualified for just being
Right.
ridiculous.
You should be pouring
But
it on shave ice.
exactly. But when one of the Psalms thinks it's semi-sweet and three of them think it's just sweet, uh, I think it goes to show a lot of how fermentation can affect the honey, and not back sweetening. Not back sweetening makes a huge difference. Um, this is
Yeah.
all this is all residual honey, or residual sweetness.
Yeah.
So yeast is lazy like any other living thing,
Yeah.
and it's going to eat all the simple sugars first and leave the complex sugars, and complex sugars are less sweet. Um, so the result is if you had a mead that was 1083 back sweetened, there's going to be a ton of raw honey in there. And even if it doesn't taste like raw honey, like the joke is with judge sheets,
Right.
um, all those simple sugars are radically sweet, and it's going to be cloying and undrinkable. And also, when you back sweeten, you're diluting the alcohol, so you're bringing down the alcohol, which is needed to balance the big sweetness. Um,
Absolutely.
so back sweetening is definitely a good tool to learn. I did it for years, but the more you learn about the final profile you want, the more you should move away from it, and I think you'll be a lot happier with the final results.
To to me, it seemed like from the beginning, I always thought about it like target fermenting. I don't know what the term for it is. I just call it target fermenting. But like, if you're starting at a high enough point to where you finish at the gravity that you want to finish at without having to back sweeten, seemed like the much easier way to go. It seemed like you don't have to deal with the science of back sweetening it and taking samples and adding this much and that much of this and how much and I got to blend, blah blah blah. No, man, just if you just hammer it up, if you study your yeast, know how many points of gravity or bricks or whatever you're using, how much it can ferment in that particular temperature range that you're comfortable using. Um, if you can just figure all that out, there's no reason why you can't just science your way down to the number where you want to be at and ixnay all the bullshit. Mike, I mean,
I definitely agree.
talking about being lazy, I'm lazy. Yeast not lazy, I'm the lazy one.
So the only risk with that is if you can overfeed the yeast or ferment too hot, and you can blow right past your target,
Sure.
because yeast can't read alcohol tolerances.
Right. Oh,
Um,
that's very true.
yeah, so you can push a 14% mead to 18% plus. You could have an 18% yeast stall out at 12%.
Been there.
And then, if you've had the yeast packet open because you bought a big packet and it's been open for a year, the yeast gets old, and less efficient. So,
True.
uh, yeah, there's definitely factors, um, with,
Yeah, there's
yeah, going
yeah.
for starting with a real high gravity and hoping to hit your target. But you can definitely dial it in with a lot of practice.
Just let me be idealistic for a second, Joe. Please, just woosah. Um,
No, I
but
mean, if it stalls out, you can blend. If it shoots past, you can back sweeten.
right,
Um,
you've got
and
options.
Yeah, and sometimes a little touch of fresh honey is definitely not a bad thing, but you don't want to be adding 40 gravity points of raw honey. But 5 points
Yeah,
might be perfect for a little bit of aroma pop.
well said, my man. So what other tips or tricks could you give somebody to take their mead from like a 32 to like a 42 plus, get you over that hump to that, gold or, best of show
So
range?
besides, yeah, so besides things like Tosna, um, and using good honey, it's great to practice on your Costco honey or your Walmart honey. Honey's really expensive, so you should definitely practice with whatever you can get your hands on.
Yeah.
Um, but once you upgrade your honey, upgrade your yeast, upgrade your feeding schedule, uh, the biggest difference is fermentation control temperature wise. Temperature control makes all the difference. That's the best way to upgrade your mead making game.
That's the
And
one thing I preach the most is, man, temperature control. One thing you can do to exactly well said. Up your game, temperature control.
yeah, so get a mini fridge, get a kegerator, get a chest freezer, whatever with an Inkbird, and yeah, regulate your temperature. And I know a, a trap a lot of I fell into, most people fall into on the forums, is they're like, oh, my meat's fermenting at 70 because my AC is set to 70. Fermentation's exothermic. It produces heat. It produces heat and it holds heat.
Yep.
So, that fermentation, if your house is 70, that fermentation is not going to be 70 degrees.
No,
It could be upwards of 78, 80 degrees, even if it's just a 5 gallon. And
right.
when you get up to, you know, 300-gallon cubes or bigger, like the amount of heat generated is insane if it's unregulated.
And
Yeast can cook itself to death. It can get so hot just because of the heat it produces.
then again, we'll get hot spots within there. It's not all just evenly, like, evenly temperatured in there, unless you have like one of those like egg-shaped or conical fermenters where it kind of does its natural thing. And yeah,
Right.
it can definitely get wild and crazy in there.
Yeah. And if you want to prove it to yourself, I know I I did this back in the day. I put a temperature probe directly down the middle of the neck of the carboy, and a temperature probe taped on the outside
Hmm.
with styrofoam to like insulate it, and
Yeah.
measured the two different and there's a temperature gradient from the outside pushed against the glass versus the middle center of the fermentation. There was a gradient,
Oh, I would.
and that's just a 5 gallon glass carboy.
Oh, I could imagine. Yeah, it would be significant. Noticeably different between the two. I just use a on my 1 gallons. I just use like almost like a what they call it, like a fish tank thermometer. Just something right on the outside. That gives me a rough estimate for a little 1 gallon. But yeah, if I was
Right.
doing anything, 5 gallon bucket wise or something like that. Yeah, the insulated freezers, kegerators, or converted kegerators to something you can turn on still and have that cooling capability, or something with like an ink bird, something you can regulate the temperature. 100% a necessity for entering competition level meets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can get away without it. Awesome titans of the homebrew.
Science.
Yeah, awesome titans like Carbon in
Hmm.
Arizona, also hot like Florida. Really focused on what yeasts are produced good meads at hot temperatures. And QA23 was one of them, of course, Kvike.
Yes, I
So
love a Kvike.
if you're not using temperature control, you should use a different yeast. And things
That
like D47 should be removed from all homebrew stores. I feel like that yeast is responsible for destroying more meads and honey than any other yeast, just because people use it without temperature control.
I think you're 100% correct there. It's there's a going around. It's like, what's your favorite yeast and why is it DV47? Oh man. Um, so I mean, speaking of like lack of temperature control, or improper yeast to honey pairing or something like that, what are some other common pitfalls that people make that when they're attempting to make sweet traditionals?
Let's see. The one thing I see a lot is people think they can ferment a cheap honey and back sweeten with an expensive honey.
Mm,
And
yeah,
yeah, that'll work. But if you were to use the honey all the way through, it's such a world of difference.
100%.
And yeah, and step feeding's the same way. I think step feeding is one step closer to the way of front loading completely, but it's kind of right in between back sweetening and front loading. Because if you're step feeding that last step, you're still going to get all that raw honey. And then people's step feeding maths is all wonky because people don't realize they're diluting at the same time. They're increasing the alcohol, so you got to do a lot of math, and um, people like us that are lazy, that's just a pain. um, but
Oh
yeah,
man.
so step feeding, I feel like should be a stepping stone and not a method. Um, I guess it's a good method if you're trying to max out your alcohol, but maxed
Yeah.
out alcohol needs are not great for competition. They're not great for drinking. You might as well just buy a essential oil maker, distiller,
Ooh.
and live in Texas, I guess, because it's legal there. But um, yeah, there's no reason to shoot for such high alcohol levels. It's
Yeah.
just it's not great for showcasing the honey or drinking.
Yes. Especially for competition level stuff. I always cringe when I see people talking about, man, I'm taking my EC 118 up to 18 and a half, 19%, and this is going to be a kick-ass thing. I'm like, man, all I can taste the fusels and it hasn't even finished fermenting yet, man.
Exactly.
It's scandalous.
So yeah, high alcohol just in general is definitely a pitfall. Um, that 12 to 14% or 12 to 16% range is great. 14 to 16, I think, if you want a barrel aged. 12 to 14 if you want to drink younger rather than older. Um, and yeah, just in that 12 to 16% range, I think is wonderful. 16, unless it's really flawless, you're going to need some more age um,
mm.
to drink it.
You know, there is now that you point those numbers out, and I kind of think about meads that I see around, you don't see a lot of meads like session meads you get, or hydromels you get down in like the 6.5, 7.5%. You don't really see anything above like 8% usually. And then, like you said, the 12 to 14% is kind of where you get for your drink them younger meads. You don't really see a whole lot living in that 8 to 12 range, 8 to 10. I see maybe some still meads closer to 10 or 11%, but you don't see a whole
So
lot in that like 8 to 10, 12 range.
so I would say I would blame that one on the government.
Oh,
Um,
fair enough.
so for session meads, you want to stay under 7% because it's different regulation. So
Mm,
that's why most session meads cap out at 6.9% because then you get regulated by the FDA instead of the
gotcha.
TTB. And it
Oh, nice.
makes labeling and canning and some state laws easier. Um,
I'm here
and
for less
then I would
bureaucracy.
say, exactly. And then up until I think a few years ago, the tax bracket on wine was capped at 14, and then I think around COVID time they increased it to 16. So now anything over 16%, you're paying exponentially more taxes. There's a couple
Oh
different
yeah,
breaks. I think it goes from like 16 to 18, and then 18 to 20, and then 20 to 22. All just keep jumping up in taxes.
and
And
that's
then
just
some
federally,
states.
not including your state taxes.
Exactly. And then every state is different. Those alcohol levels might even be illegal. Some states
Very
say
true.
wine can't be below
12% or
9%,
whatever.
7%, or yeah,
Yeah,
every state has weird, archaic laws. Some of these laws are literally pre-prohibition. They make no sense whatsoever. Um,
yeah, 100%.
and
Yeah,
then,
always follow your laws, people, when you're going commercial.
yeah, and then government labeling says you have about 1.5% wiggle room. So a 12% mead could be 10 and a half, or it could be 13 and a half if you were to actually get it lab tested.
Right.
Um, yeah.
And that's one thing I see on a lot of people's bottles that always trip me out. Anywhere from they put you know 12 to 14% or 10 to 14%. It's like 10 to 14%. That's a pretty big variance. Like 12 to 14, okay, you get plus or minus 1% off of 13. I'll give you that. But 10 to 14, that's a stalled mead to a well finished mead.
Well,
Oh,
sometimes when you're working with honey and fruit and all these natural ingredients, season to season, things might be different. Um, and you may
yeah.
want, it may come out perfect at 14% the first year, and then the next year, if fermented, or you decide, oh, the cherries just weren't popping as much this year, so I need to add a little bit more cherry juice in the post, and now that drops it down to 12, but it tastes the same as the previous year because you just need more cherry to hit that number. And price breaks with labels is definitely a thing. So if you can just print a large amount of labels once, it's way better than printing them multiple times with an exact number.
No, yeah, I totally get all that. It throws me for a loop sometimes at the persnicketyness they get. Like they'll let you be loose on a label like that from 10 to 14%. But God help you if you put mead or like root beer or something that's not actually in your mead on the label. Like, come on,
Oh,
Kohler, get out of here with
absolutely.
that. Um,
And we
so
just recently started doing a couple bouchets, and they want us to put caramelized mead instead of caramelized honey mead. And yeah, they wanted to drop the honey, even though the caramelized thing was the honey, not the mead per se. But it's always interesting with the labeling.
and it's usually some well-meaning person who's out there interpreting what they're reading for the first time because they've never heard of mead until they've talked to you and all these things. So you get to educate them, and it's frustrating, but yeah, I roll with the punches, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, so talking about different temperatures, different yeasts, and everything. And I guess going back to our conversation earlier about like balance and perception of acidity in oak. How do you perceive I say the necessity of balance, but How do you perceive balance within the sweet traditional style? What should people be looking for in the balance of a sweet traditional mead?
Great question. And this kind of relates back to the taking a 30s mead to a 40s mead. Acid
Mm,
and tannins are absolutely critical to learn and understand those. Uh, and both post and up front, water profiles don't get talked enough about in mead. It's kind of been brushed aside and saying it's not important or it doesn't really make a difference. Um, and that's
I think
definitely
it makes all the
nonsense.
difference.
Yeah, it makes all the difference because you're using more water than honey in almost every style of mead, um, unless it's one of our quote unquote waterless meads, one of our endless meads where we use only fruit and honey.
Right.
um, but in sweet traditionals, that water makes a huge difference. That was one of the biggest changes I had to make from homebrewing to professional. Is homebrewing I would use spring water, which
Mm,
is neutral 7 pH. Um,
gotcha.
and then here at the meadery, our water is hard. Um,
Ooh.
got it measured, and I think it came out back like 8.9 pH.
Holy
So
cow.
it's absolutely alkaline, which means after we filter it, it's the best tasting water ever. I personally really prefer alkaline water for drinking.
Same.
And now after all these years, I think alkaline water is even better for mead making. The only problem is if you do not make up for it with acid, then you will end up with very flabby meads in the 4 pH range, undrinkably flabby. Um, you want meads to be high acid and pop. Um, One thing with sweet traditionals I
Hmm.
kind of fell down a rabbit hole with is if you look into the European rules of Rieslings,
Okay.
Riesling's sweetness scale is directly correlated to acid. So there is a sugar to acid ratio that determines the sweetness level of a Riesling. And I feel like that scale should I mean, it directly correlates to mead. Um,
Oh,
so
that's cool.
you can definitely have a much sweeter mead, drink a lot lower perceived sweetness if it has a lot of acid, just like tannins. Um, so balancing with acid and tannins is absolutely important. Tannins help dry it out. Acids help make it juicy and pop. Um, and
Yes.
then, of course, there's an exception to all this. Uh,
Harvest
Lahua.
meats.
So since I know my water profile is constant here at the meadery, it's really, really good
Yeah.
water. Um, I take a pH reading every time I mix in the honey and water, and I've noticed that the pH changes a lot depending on the honey. So honey is a lot of people don't think about it because honey is just acidic. That's it. But the amount of the pH range on honey can greatly vary a lot more than people think or have measured. And
Oh, I'm sure. Nobody does
yeah,
titration on their honey.
yeah, oh, exactly. So I've noticed Lahua is an alkaline honey,
Oh,
and if you bring down the acid, you lose all that pineapple and butterscotch. It doesn't matter what
interesting.
acid you use, even less flavorful ones like lactic or something like that, that
Right.
don't have like a fruity profile. As soon as you drop the acid on Lahua, you lose the Lahua qualities. It's that pineapple and butterscotch vanish, and it's kind of an indistinct tropical fruit, but
I've seen
it
that so
loses
many
the
times
nuance.
with Lahua meads.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's absolutely pH based.
Hmm.
So you can't always acid adjust to the same numbers. It really depends on the honey. Um, Different acids will make different honeys sing. So the more bench trials you can do, the better. Uh, Honestly, fermentation is half the battle. The other 50% is bench trials, and you can always improve a mead, whether it's a gravity point or two of honey, or a dash of acid, or a touch of oak, or blending a little bit with a different mead,
Hmm.
or back sweetening with a different honey. I've had experimented with back sweetening with different honeys when I'm like, okay, this definitely needs like 5 points to really be balanced. Um, Obviously, the first go-to is going to be the honey I fermented with, but different honeys, even that small amount, can really make a radical difference. Like the first time I noticed it was with one of my banana meads at home. I'm like, oh, Tupelo honey is going to be awesome to back sweeten with. That little bit of Tupelo honey made the bananas green. It
Oh,
de-ripens them. It was the weirdest thing ever.
okay.
Um, and with a raspberry mead, I'm like, oh, blackberry honey is going to be perfect. This is a fruity honey. It's going to really make the raspberries pop. It made the raspberry mead taste artificial because of the blackberry honey.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
so yeah, different.
unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, luckily it was a bench trial. So you're gonna do bench trials. You're gonna discover things. And the other thing with acids, tannins, and back sweetening is it's not linear or binary. It can be a bell curve with a literal sweet spot, or it can be a wave. If you have 5 different samples for back sweetening, um, one might be really awesome, two might be not good, three might be not good. So you just assume 4 and 5 are also not going to be good, but four
Yeah.
might be absolutely amazing. Um, and then 5 is way too much. But that 4 is somehow incredible, while 2 and 3 weren't. Um, so always do more in a bench trial than you think, and really try everything, give it a fair chance, and you'll be surprised often. There's literal sweet spots for everything in balancing.
Nice. Yeah, I bench trialing is definitely something I think I need to get a little more adept with. It's something that I, again, talk about being lazy, bench trialing and wanting to just target ferment. All those things aren't necessary then, but yeah, 100% acidity, bench trialing is something that definitely needs to be done. Is back sweetening, all those different things. Let's see here. Uh, I guess we can get into, we're coming up on here about 50 minutes, so getting into some a little more esoteric and kind of just more thought-provoking type of questions. Um, how do you feel about the state of mead competitions today, and what do you think could make them better?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think they are, I've been entering them for 7 years now, and the first year I entered, the AMA Mead Maker of the Year circuit was starting. Um, so I think that was already a huge improvement, and I believe it's still going on.
Yep.
And having quote unquote, I don't know if they're certified, but basically having a list of qualified competitions is really important, and I would recommend entering all of them. Uh, not all competitions are good. Good in the sense of you might get a pat on the back or a blue ribbon, but it's your local state fair or homebrew club. Um, and there's, of course, homebrew clubs that fall into the trap of there's only 3 people in the group that make mead, and no one's had a mead outside of the homebrew club. So they're
Yeah.
kind of comparing in this vacuum to each other, and they're all still under the belief that a mead needs 3 years in a closet to be drinkable, and it can't possibly be competition worthy in a month. Um,
Right.
so entering these official competitions where there's really good judges is important. And entering multiple of them is important because there are definitely regional biases,
Yeah.
which is good and bad. You can definitely learn them over the years and start to notice specific judge names. Um, but judges are volunteers and they're humans. So as objective as we want these competitions to be, they're going to be subjective. And that's why it's important to get as many qualified feedbacks as possible.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, enter a lot of competitions with the same needs, get a lot of different feedbacks from different qualified people. It's definitely important, and be open to the point. The point of entering competitions is not to win. It's, I think, winning medals is a bonus.
Right.
You are paying for feedback.
Right.
If you want people just to give you a high score or say this is amazing or congratulate you, share it with your friends, and they'll
Right.
blow smoke up your ass because it's free alcohol.
Exactly.
Um,
It always tastes
but
better when
yeah,
it's free.
exactly. If anything, I feel
Almost always.
competition judges could be more, harsh isn't the right word, but more critical, because critical
Con-
feedback allows
constructively
everyone to improve.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I always thought constructive criticism is the way to go, and it kills me when I see score sheets going out with, again, BJCP style, and we talk about, too much writing and everything, which I agree with all that, but nonetheless, that's the format that said competitions are using, and you see sheets going out with 3-4 words on them and everything. It's like you're really doing these people a disservice, um, doing that and everything. And I agree. It's nice to see that the Mead Institute is taking a more objective wine rubric type of approach, um,
yeah,
to try to remedy that heavy-handed writing aspect, to get, but still give somebody something that is I don't know what the term for it would be, a well-rounded, interpretation of what their mead was, in, how it was interpreted and perceived by the judges. I don't. I feel like there's a better way to word that.
but yeah, no, there's especially the major competitions like the Mazer Cup. Uh, really amazing judges, really amazing organizer, and these people have been doing it passionately for. Some of these people have been judging for longer than I've been making mead the past 10 years, and these people,
Mm,
uh, I've learned from their experience. The best thing you can do is grow each other, um, and learn from each other and teach people. Um, so yeah,
yeah.
good mead makes everything better. The more people making good mead, the better. Because when people make bad meads, it hurts everyone.
Yes.
Mead's still, even though mead's the oldest thing in the world, it's still so new that if you bring this rocket fuel, jet fuel, Mountain Dew mead to your coworkers and think it's the best thing ever, and you know, they think it's the worst thing ever, they're never going to touch meat again because they think it's all meat's going to taste like that. That's their one and only experience. They're not going to be like, I wonder what other meats taste like.
And that really is something that I think is unique to me. And I say that all the time. I work at Funktastic on the weekends, and it always astonishes me that you get somebody who says, I had mead one time, 10 years ago. I didn't like it. I was out of a friend's basement or whatever. Mead's not for me. But in that same time, it's like, how many different wines have you tried? How many different beers have you tried? How many cocktails have you went out and had at bars over the course of that 10 years? All those things were okay. I'm sure you stumbled across more than one that you didn't like at that time, but you still went back and were willing to try it again. But for some
Exactly.
reason, mead always has that hard wall stop. I tried it once. I didn't like it. I'm out.
Yep. It's one of the many curses of mead. Uh,
Yes,
it's,
well put. Um, so I guess back to the competition portion of it. Should there be more subcategories for sweetness, or should like those categories be even broken down further?
uh, if there was another section of categories, I would say dessert sweet should definitely be added. Um, the more competitions can already suffer from everyone entering semi-sweet or sweet and dry being not entered. So the more you divide it, the more categories can suffer, just being split.
Yeah.
Um, but with that said, I think some of these older judges that have been around forever judging meads that they think a mead should never be over 1020 unless it's Polish. Um,
Right.
they have that mindset. So I think the only way to force them to judge a mead by what it is to have a sweeter category. Um, and yes,
Well
this
put.
is, it may be too sweet for your personal palate, but this is balanced and this does showcase the honey. And there's a handful of people that can't get past that and think a sweet mead should only be a little sweet, and not dessert sweet. And it should never be
Right.
cloying, but it can be liquid honey in the best way possible. And that's what honey is, very sweet. And I think a real sweet mead should also be very sweet without being cloying. Um,
Yeah. I yeah. I don't think it needs to be any more stated than that. I think it very well put. Um, any last minute tips on gaming the system? So we had a tip earlier in the series said when it comes to mead descriptions, less is always more. We don't need to hear about the which particular hills your blueberries were growing on, or how the bees were feeling the day that they were pollinating the flowers. It's just a less is more, and sometimes even leaving out stuff if you added strawberries but you can't perceive them, maybe don't put strawberries on the list. Any sort of
yeah,
tips on
yeah,
gaming the system?
absolutely. And gaming is the right way to put it, which is unfortunate because you should be able to list all the ingredients. But if you list all the ingredients, you're gonna judges feel obligated to, maybe your triple berry mead, you didn't want the blueberries to be equal to the raspberries and blackberries. You want the blueberries to just be this background player that kind of just melds everything together. But you're going to get
Right.
a judge that's going to be like, I get the raspberries and blackberries, but there's no blueberries coming through. So negative,
Yeah.
or taking away points. And I hate that because, I added or I didn't make this mead, but I added
Right.
blueberries that, bridge the gap between these berries, and the difference is night and day between with and without the blueberries. But it's not blueberries is a side player. It's not one of the main showcasing stars.
Yeah.
So saying multi-berry instead of listing the berries is one way to quote unquote game the system, and that's just because it removes some of the bias and expectations. And honey varietals is another thing that's really difficult. Um, so, as we know, all honeys taste different,
Yeah.
but even hyper local, incredible varietal honeys, if I get Florida Orange Blossom, same exact season from two different parts of the state, and let's say they both I got them both tested and they were both 90% Orange Blossom. Um, if one of those areas had a lot of rain, it knocked out all the oak pollen, so you're going to get this delicate jasmine, super light orange blossom honey. But this
Here for
other
that.
part of the state got no rain, so the orange blossom honey is filled with oak pollen, which gives you a darker, candied orange citrus profile and much less of that white flowered jasmine.
Okay.
So both of those are Florida orange blossom honey. Both of those are pure Florida orange blossom honey, but the profiles are radically different. Um, so you're going to get judges that are going to judge the dark orange blossom and say, I don't get any jasmine. And someone that judges the jasmine and be like, I don't get any of the candied citrus, just because of their personal experience. And California orange blossom is, I think, I forget the statistics out there, but it's like 70 or 80% lemon, lime, and grapefruit. It's not usually oranges,
Oh yeah.
depending on which part of the state you get it from. But they call it all orange blossom honey, even though it should all be called probably citrus honey.
Yep.
Texas orange blossom is going to be different. So every judge's opinion on what orange blossom honey is different. So that's a problem with varietal honeys.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I opened the meadery, I drove around the state working with pollinators, and I got everyone's palmetto, everyone's gallberry, everyone's holly, and I'm like, I want the best version of each honey to make a mead out of to show people what Florida honey tastes like. And by the end of the trip around the state, I didn't know what those honeys tasted like anymore because everyone very pure varietal honey tasted different just because of the regional differences. And if they harvested the holly at the beginning of spring rather than the end of spring, or what was growing near the gallberry at the time, and or this is last year's gallberry, and this year's a bunch of holly bloomed, whereas last year a bunch didn't, so the gallberry is in this mix. And it's just varietal honey is judging on a specific variety is difficult. So often putting wildflower, you're going to get a better result because they're not going to be expecting things that they subjectively are expecting.
Yeah.
I got one of the best Tupelo honeys possibly in the world a few years ago from a beekeeper that's been doing this for 70 years and has hives all over the Georgia-Florida border. And he moved these hives throughout the season to follow the blooms. And this was his life's work making this honey. And this
Okay.
guy is one of the highest up engineers at I think it's Danton Sons. They test honey for the USDA, so they have state-of-the-art honey lab. So this guy, I don't know anyone that knows honey better than this guy. And I
Okay.
got some of the master life's work Tupelo honey from him and entered it in one of the competitions. And these judges were like, "This doesn't taste like Tupelo. This doesn't taste like Tupelo," and just bashed it for not tasting like Tupelo.
It
Because they've
couldn't be more Tupelo, you clowns.
exactly. Um, but I mean, you go on Amazon and this Honey Feast company sells quote unquote Tupelo honey. But if you
Oh
actually look
yeah.
closely at the label, it's black gum Tupelo and not Tupelo.
White.
And Tupelo, the famous, expensive, rare Tupelo is white Narcissus, I think it is. Um, but the black gum Tupelo is also called Tupelo, but it's a totally different species. And people sell that
Gotcha.
Tupelo. So if the honey judge just bought the cheapest Tupelo on Amazon, he thinks that's what Tupelo tastes like, even though it's a different species. So calibrating judges' profiles on varietal honeys definitely needs to be a area to be worked on, but
Yeah.
even then it's hard to do because I can bring 6 different versions of Florida orange or just orange blossom honey in general
Yeah.
um, to that judging calibration.
No,
So
but to your
that's
same credit, you could bring 6 Florida springtime orange blossom honeys, and they could all be wildly different.
exactly. So I think that's one of the uh, challenges to objectively doing varietal honey as a category. And I don't think that gets talked about enough because people don't have enough experience with consistently getting the same honey every season from the same area, or just working directly with the people harvesting the honey, because a lot of these times you're buying it at farmers markets or someone that
Mm,
is repackaging all different honeys and they don't know what was growing in the area. They might have been
true.
told something, but when I'm working with people that have been doing the same yards for 30 years, they know all the plants in the area, what's blooming, what did bloom this year, what didn't bloom this year. Um,
Yeah.
and it makes a big difference knowing who is providing the honey um, to get a more exact breakdown of the floral sources.
Gotcha. Yeah. I want the Florida nerds design, telling me where the good honey comes from, as opposed to just, like you said, it, there's a place and time for Costco and Walmart mead or honey meads, but you got to get the good stuff. And even if it is paying that premium dollar for it, and even if the judge doesn't pick up the flavor profile, it's gonna get you that truer, more complex flavor profile that you're looking for.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are just at the 1 hour mark. I don't want to take up too much more of your time tonight. Any other, like I said, last minute words of wisdom or anything you want to bestow upon anybody before I let you go?
Um, make as much meat as possible, do as many bench trials as possible, enter as many competitions as possible. Practice makes perfect, and that's something you always hear, and it's one of those phrases that as is so often repeated that it's probably meaningless, but it's absolutely true, especially with mead. And drink as much mead as possible. And
Yes.
I don't mean get high on your own supply. I mean look up competition winners, look
Yeah.
up people that are winning the awards, and order meads from them. Um, Calibrate your profile and your mead building taste library
Yeah.
by meads that have won awards. It's the best way to learn. um, I came into mead through craft beer shares, so I was always hunting beers and chasing whales and sharing beers. And then our group discovered mead, and we started doing it with mead. And before
Yeah.
opening the meadery, I had reviewed, written down in a notebook over 1,000 different meads around the world. And I really feel having that many different meads by that different many producers
Mhm.
helped calibrate my profile, what I liked, what I didn't like, inspiration. So drink as much mead as possible from different places, and seek out good examples. If you're interested in making dry traditionals, look up the Mazer Cup who won the dry traditionals that year, and go to Vino Shipper or shopmeats.com and order those winners and be like,
Yep.
wow, okay, this is what a gold medal dry traditional tastes like. Or in this case, a sweet traditional.
Yep.
Not to self plug, but it is on our website, Zymarium.com. And
Yes.
I'll have to go to one of these bottles too next time I see you. We took the
Ooh.
Lahua sweet traditional and aged it on a pound per gallon of raw coconut, which is an obscene amount. It absorbed almost 30% of the mead, but the raw coconut, this is existential magnetism. Um, the raw
Oh.
coconut adds this huge amount of savoriness and silkiness. So you get the big sweet honey up front and then the savory finish. And then you just keep going back and back and back because it just
Yes.
refreshes your palate. And it's such a insanely awesome transport you to Hawaii combination. And also that insane amount of coconut gives this like silky, silky mouthfeel with the coconut oil.
I think
So yeah, if
Orlando's
you
only
make
about a 10-hour drive from Richmond, so
that's
they
not
see me
bad.
sooner than later.
Yeah.
Holy
So yeah,
cow.
make big sweet traditionals, and then
Yeah.
they can be your bait for doing treatments to it, whether it's coffee, coconut, vanilla, nuts,
Yep.
whatever. You can play with meads once you make a really good base. It doesn't just have to be a traditional. You can split it up. To
Absolutely.
answer Patchwork Riot, we used over 100 pounds of coconut, and we used coconut macaroon, which is hyper shredded coconut for maximum surface area, and
Maximum
it's
surface
crazy.
area. Yes, no, I'm here for it. Coconut's like one of my favorite adjuncts. Coconuts, hazelnuts, vanilla, like I'm in for all of those things. So you have
Oh,
definitely
absolutely.
piqued my interest. I've I got to make it down there for one of those bottles. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining me tonight. A wonderful amount of information. Everybody go, like you said, follow Zymarium on all the socials, shopmeads.com if you can, Zymarium.com. Get all the meads sent directly to your house if you're in one of those states where they allow that. There's a handful of places out there where they unfortunately don't. We can't really do anything about that. But it's been a pleasure, my man. I greatly
Likewise.
appreciate it, and I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Have a good rest of your evening.
You too. Cheers.
Cheers. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. BJCP Style Guideline Advice Series M1C Sweet Traditionals in the Book with Zymarium Meadery. Catch me next time when we get into the sizers, M2A sizer. Have a good night.